Welcome back to Lead Full Circle, where we emphasize leadership in all circles of life. And here we have a saying, lead well at work, but even better at home. And today we're excited about episode 10 titled Leading Beyond Yourself. This is an extension of last week. It's a part 2 of this series of Leading Beyond Yourself. But before we continue, I want to encourage everyone, if you have not already, to please subscribe, like, and comment on my YouTube channel. That's a big deal. So please, I would encourage everyone to do that. So now let's dive in to Leading Beyond Yourself, part 2. Desperation that produces focus. That's the main idea, main thought here for today's lesson. And what do I mean when I say desperation? I'm not talking about a sense of panic, a sense of chaos, a sense of stress. I'm referring to a time of clarity that comes to your mind when something is really at stake. Maybe the pressure's mounting, and where does your focus really need to be in those moments? I think we can pull a very valuable leadership lesson out of the Bible in Acts chapter 1 as we look at the disciples. And in this time in the Bible, this is when Jesus ascended into heaven. So think about the disciples and how that was a true sense of desperation. Their leader, their friend, their God, their teacher ascends into heaven. Can you imagine how the disciples felt at that time? Here they are going to try to carry out the mission of the gospel throughout all ends of the earth. But their teacher, their leader ascends into heaven. I would imagine the disciples at that time probably felt inadequate to carry out that mission. But here's what I absolutely love about this leadership lesson that we can pull from the disciples at that time in the Bible is they did not scatter. They did not panic. They did not create some new strategy on their own to go reach and carry out the gospel. They did not quit. There was never a sense of quitting on the mission that they began with in the first place. They never wanted to flee that. They stuck together and they prayed. Think about that. The disciples, they stuck together and they prayed and they waited on God's Spirit to return. How valuable of a leadership lesson we can pull from the disciples out of Acts chapter 1. So when we are dealing or facing a time of desperation, do we handle it like the disciples did there? Or do we quit? Or do we scatter? Do we do our own agenda? Where is our focus? Our focus should always be on the main mission, the main values that we believe in. So I think there's a lot of practical takeaways that we can pull from the lesson from the disciples here that I just referred to and apply it to leadership at work and leadership at home. So let's start with an emphasis at work in the idea of desperation that produces focus. Let's start with a school setting. That's very relevant for me. So let's talk about a school setting. Let's say a school is underperforming academically. That can be a sense of desperation. A lot of times we have to be very careful at a school is when maybe we're struggling in a certain area with our academics to not put a lot of new initiatives in place because it sounds good. It looks flashy. That's not where our focus needs to be. A sense of desperation should be bring some clarity to our mind that, hey, we can't fix everything at one time. Let's focus on one main idea that we can try to improve on. Maybe it's, hey, we need to focus on literacy. We need to focus on middle school math, whatever it may be as far as a struggle within the school setting. Focus on one major idea and chip away at it that way instead of bringing in 10 different initiatives that sound good and look flashy. Maybe your business, maybe the morale in your business is dropping and you can just sense it, you can feel it. And again, I think a lot of times our instincts in these situations is to bring in new incentives, new metrics, new policies to help build up the morale. But again, that time of desperation, I think your focus should be on building relationships with the people there. Think about a strategy that I mentioned in my very first episode here at Lead Full Circle. the power of a handwritten note. Think about just how, if you write 2 or 3 thank you notes, thank you cards to the people you work with each week, over time, how many people you can influence and encourage by just a simple handwritten note to somebody telling them how thankful you are for them, how important they are to your business. I think little things like that can really help build the morale, and you're focusing on what you need to focus on. And that's the relationship with the people you work with, instead of trying these new incentives, new metrics, new policies that a lot of times sound great, look flashy, but I think desperation can cut right through that. So where does your focus need to be in a time like that, when your morale is dropping at business, within your business, your organization, your work? Focus on the relationships with the people you work with. I think a lot of times coaches can relate to this. Any athletic season's a long season. You're going to have your ups and downs. It's a roller coaster of a ride sometimes. So maybe you're not having the season you wanted to have. And in the middle of the season, you're struggling. You haven't won as many games. The culture's not great within your team, your program. Well, what do? Do you completely flip your script of your philosophy of your program and completely try something new? I think if you do that, you'll completely lose your team. I think your focus during that time of desperation needs to be focused on the fundamentals, teamwork, discipline, the true foundation of your program, of your teams. I remember when I was an assistant coach at Bob Jones, we made it to the Final Four. We won a state championship. And that year we made it to the Final Four. We had the worst overall record of any team of any classification that made it to the Final Four. But I say that to say it had been an easy time in the middle of that season to completely change what we were doing, but we did not. Coach Danny Petty and our coaching staff, we worked through it. We stuck. We believed in our philosophy. We believed in our principles as a program. And we just really focused on the little things, on the details. And over time, it started clicking. So again, where does your focus need to go in those times of desperation? Don't bring in a ton of different new stuff. Try to completely flip what you're doing. Focus on the main philosophy, main fundamentals of your program. So now I want to transition to our home life and our family life. In a sense, in a time of desperation, where does our focus go as a family? Think about, and it's so relevant. We are so busy, just the world in general. Our families are so busy day to day, week to week, month to month, with schedules, with ball games, with different lessons, so on and so on, different events. There's no margin time for family anymore. I think that makes a very negative impact on families, because you just really don't spend good quality time together because you're going a million different directions. So in that time of desperation, where should your focus be? I think at some point we've got to say, desperation, and this time we got to stop. We have to pause. We have to reset. And where does our focus need to go as a family? We can't keep up this pace of just nonstop, day in and day out, and not connecting as a family. So maybe it's something as simple as, you know what? Thursday nights, let's protect Thursday nights and make sure we sit down and have dinner together as a family. Maybe it's something as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a huge moment, a huge shift in what you're doing. Maybe it's just something as protecting one night a week for your family to eat dinner together. Just something simple. Think about your marriage at times. Do you feel distant in your marriage? Because again, just the busyness of life is pulling you apart. I think desperation in a time of marriage where you're feeling distance, I think desperation can cut through the idea of, man, we've got to take a big trip together. We got to take a big beach trip or wherever it may be. That may not necessarily be the best fix. What if the best fix is, what if we just spend 10 minutes together, 10 to 20 minutes together a day and just have conversations with each other? Maybe it's once we put the kids down for bed, we just stay up and just have conversations and talk to each other. Wherever that finds you and your spouse, I think just having the quality time together, a few minutes a day, is so important, rather than going, hey, let's just go take a big trip where you're together for a whole week, but then you come back and you're still in your day-to-day, and then you start drifting away again. So How can you find time in your schedule as a married couple to have good quality conversations, good quality time together? And again, it's just minor adjustments that I think over time will grow and help you strengthen your marriage even more. And the last thing I want to emphasize here when we talk about desperation that produces focus, maybe your kids are drifting and you don't feel connected to your kids at times. All goes back to the busyness of life. I think that's one problem we have as a culture is we just get so caught up and just going nonstop. And you may be going to ball games with your kids. You may be going to different lessons with your kids, different events with your kids. But are you truly still getting to know your kids and love on your kids and connect with them at a deeper level? I mentioned this a couple weeks ago that I just started with Caroline, and it has been so rewarding. When do you pray with your kids? When do you read the Bible with your kids? When do you do a small devotion with your kids? I just started this a few weeks ago, but every morning before school, me and Caroline pray together and we read a small devotion together, just 5 minutes. And that's not a lot of time, but that's enough time for me to really make that connection with Caroline, but also do what's important. And that's teach her how to study the Bible, teach her how to pray to God and model that for her, but model it with her. I just, again, where can you make that adjustment within your family to connect with your kids? And I'm not talking about going and doing ball games and lessons. I'm talking about really sitting down with them and having good conversations, productive conversations. I think that's important. So again, that's going to find everybody at different places. We're all at different seasons of life, but what adjustment can you make in that sense of desperation where you're feeling distant from your kids? What adjustment can you make to put your focus on connecting with your kids at a deeper level? You can see the statement here. Desperation strips away distractions and puts the non-negotiables right in front of us. So I really want to end with this one question and think about this question now. It's so important. If you had to circle three non-negotiables at work and then three non-negotiables at home, where would that find you? And once you find those three non-negotiables at work and at home, how do you protect them? How do you make sure those three non-negotiables are in play, are in place every day at work and at home? I hope this has been very relevant for you, and there's a lot of takeaways you can apply to different areas of your life. I really appreciate you tuning in and watching at Lead Full Circle. This has been episode 10. I do want to encourage everybody to continue to go to patreon.com/leadfullcircle. This is where we have an extension of each episode. We take a deep dive into these conversations. There'll be conversations on Patreon that will not be featured on YouTube. Go to patreon.com, check it out. Really good in-depth conversations on each episode. And thank you for tuning in to Lead Full Circle. And remember, lead well at work, but even better at home. And I'll see you next week.